There is a man in your kingdom in whom is the spirit of the set apart Elohim. And in the days of your father, like I said, she remembered Nebuchadnezzar and Daniel. And in the days of your father, light and understanding and wisdom, like the wisdom of the Elohim, were found in him. So that's huge. How he was known. And because of that honor that pretty much is given to him, is that I also mentioned the other interpretation of the Ruach actually speaking to the king, being the queen, the Ruach. Light, like Yahushua is light. Understanding and wisdom, like the wisdom of the Elohim. So since he saw the hand writing, which he would have he would have thought that that was an Elohim or a mighty one, or as they would call him now, God. So she says this, like the wisdom of the Elohim. Because if no man can read that, maybe Daniel can, because he has the wisdom of the angels also. So it says, like the wisdom of the Elohim were found in him. And King Nebuchadnezzar, your father the king, made him chief of the magicians, astrologers, Chaldeans, and soothsayers, inasmuch as an excellent spirit, knowledge, understanding, interpreting dreams, solving riddles, and explaining enigmas were found in this Daniel. Look how the name Daniel, the Hebrew name, still is kept set apart, even though Nebuchadnezzar gave him a different name with the false Elohim attached to it. Yet his name is kept pure because it is Hebrew, because it is important, because it represents those who keep the name of Yahweh set apart and that of his son, Yahushua. So, explaining enigmas were found in this Daniel, whom the king named Belteshazzar, like I was saying. And look, this is so interesting, because the beast, the world leader, being represented by the king whose name is Belshazzar, is the one who comes to try to take the place of the last who will become the king of the world. Yahweh will set the last, Mashiach, the second coming, as the king, while Yahushua, the first coming, came as the Kohen Gadol, the high priest. So first and last become one at the end, as in Zechariah 14:9 is prophesied, and also in Ezekiel 37. And many other parts of scripture, the first and last become one. So then he manifests on Revelation 19 as King of Kings, Sovereign of Sovereigns. So the fact that the name that Nebuchadnezzar gave his son, who became the representation of the beast in this chapter, is so close to the name that he gave Daniel, the leader of the wise man, the actual, at the time, the wisest man of all. So it shows the connection between the beast in contrast to the last, the Son of Man. Just like Belshazzar with Belteshazzar, the Lord of the treasure, or the prince of the Lord. So once again, obviously the Bel connecting to the Lord. So it says, whom the king named Belteshazzar. Now let Daniel be called, and he will give the interpretation.